Hello, Warhammer 40K players and Imperial Knight players in particular. In this video, that is part of the new September 2025 10th edition Imperial Knight Codex releases, we will be going over the Gate Warden Lance Detachment in particular. We're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive, but more of a fun video because this, I tell you, is the Porphyrion detachment. All right. We will not be reading the flavor text just so that we can save times to get to all the stuff that we want to cover. So first of all, we're going to go over that detachment rule. At the start of the first battle round, remember the timing, select 2 objective markers on the battlefield to be your foundations. Now, it says here, 2 objective markers. It does not specify that it has to be a no man's land objective marker. This can be your home objective and the opponent's home objective if you wish. When you draw a line from any part of one of your foundations to the other, if any part of a model's base or any part of a model's hull for a model without a base, they already kind of hinting at using the Acastus Knights, crosses that line, that model's unit is said to be on your defensive line. While an Imperial Knights unit from your army is on your defensive line, that unit has the following ability. Against the Horde, each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a visible enemy unit, you can ignore any or all modifiers to the hit roll, and weapons equipped by models in this unit have the Sustain Hits 1 ability. Now, do note, 1, you have to be on your defensive line. This is Imperial Knights units only, no allies. And each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a visible enemy unit. This means ranged or melee. It doesn't specify whether it's ranged or melee. It sounds like it's ranged only because it says visible enemy unit. But this actually works for melee too. But remember that the enemy unit has to be visible. So if you're fighting through a wall, even if you're on the defensive line, it doesn't matter. You don't get the buffs. You have to be on your defensive line, and you have to be able to see the enemy unit, whether it's in melee or ranged. If it's ranged, you have to be able to see them anyway, right? No, indirect fire. You see, this does not work with indirect fire, even if you are on the defensive line. If you are using a Caractacus mortar battery or an Acastus mortar, if you cannot see them, then you don't get sustained ones and you don't get to ignore mods to the hit roll, which means if the enemy has stealth for some reason or smoke, then you can't ignore that. So each time one of your foundations is removed from the battlefield, for example, by a primary mission rule, Scorched Earth, or the one where objectives disappear, just after it is removed, select a new objective marker on the battlefield to be one of your foundations. That is cool. That way, if somebody burns your home or you burn their home or both, you still have an option to have a defensive line because most of the detachment does not work if you don't have a defensive line. So let's go over the enhancement. The first one is Acquisitor at Arms. Imperial Knights model only. While the bearer is on your defensive line and there are no enemy units on your defensive line, add the bearer's objective control characteristic to that of each model affected by the bearer's bondsman ability. That is a lot of restrictions. You have to be on the defensive line. No enemy units have to be on the defensive line. And you're only adding OC to each model affected by the bearer's bondsman ability, meaning you have to have a bondsman ability. Well, I believe that every knight that's capable of getting an enhancement has a bondsman ability. Well, except for the Dominus Knights. So it would not work with Dominus Knights. So this is only for Questoris and Cerastus Knights that are not Canis Rex. This this is too many restrictions. It's not a very good enhancement, I don't think. Especially not the way that I intend to play it if I were to play this detachment. I'm going to give you a quick sneak preview, but we're soon going to deep dive this. But you see here this thick line? When it mentions objective marker, rules as written, it's not the whole big circle. It's only that small marker in the center of the circle. And that's why we have this thick looking banner in the middle. This is not the whole circle that is in range of the objective marker. You ever hear that in the rules? That are within range of the objective marker. This is just the objective marker. Rules as written. If this is what they intended, it's a very sort of thin or thick, depending on how you look at it, little ribbon banner in the middle here. So, Acquisitor at Arms, it's not a very good enhancement for the way I see myself playing it. Purgation's Hand. Imperial Knights model only. Each time the bearer makes a melee attack, if the bearer is on your defensive line, reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1. This is amazing. However, you have to be on the defensive line. So that is quite restrictive. I think it might be usable. But on the other hand, I don't think this detachment is the detachment. I don't think it's the go-to detachment. I think it's more of a fun detachment. I think this is the Porphyrion detachment. I believe that either Valor Strike Lance, which seems extremely strong, or Spearhead at Arms are better than this detachment. This detachment, there's there are too many restrictions, and you will see it as we keep discussing it. Augury Halo. Imperial Knights model only. Each time the bearer makes a ranged attack while the bearer is on your defensive line again, weapons equipped by the bearer have the ignores cover ability. Okay, compared with Purgation's Hand, I think this is a lot better because you want to be on the defensive line, and Knights have Towering Rule. So as long as you tow a ruin, you have true line of sight through that ruin. And so I think having more range knights in this detachment is just better because you have a lot more reach where your enhancement and the army rule comes into effect. Sure, you can use melee, but I don't think this detachment is intended for a gallant to just sit on your defensive line all game. I think this detachment is primarily for range knights, but also for mixed, like the Warden, for example, that has ranged options, but also has a strong melee option as well. Um, it's very situational, the melee stuff, but the ranged stuff, it's more likely to be seen and used in battle. So the last one is Vengeful Tread. I believe this is the best enhancement in the detachment. Imperial Knights model only. Once per turn, you can target the bearer with a tank shock stratagem for 0 CP. Do notice, nowhere does it say that you can use a tank shock stratagem for 0 CP, even if another unit used it. So, it just lets you get a free tank shock, but it doesn't copy it. So, if you bring a Lancer and this enhancement, if you use the Knight, let's just say it's an Atropos that has a free tank shock, and you have a Lancer that has a free tank shock, but you can use it even though another unit has used tank shock. Now you can double tank shock. Do I think the Lancer is a good knight in this detachment? Absolutely not. Well, actually, there's a case. There's a case to be made for the Lancer. You want to be standing on your defensive line. The Lancer just happens to be one of the more durable knight chassis out there. It is fast, so you can get to an objective maybe in one turn. And it has a 4-up invul, in ranged, and melee. It doesn't have many good ranged options, but that's not what people bring it for. People usually bring it as a bullet sponge. So the Lancer, it could be used in this detachment. Just park it on the defensive line and just have it soak bullets and gain VP while it's alive. So you could use it. Me personally, I think this is a more ranged focused detachment with a little sprinkling of melee if needed. So now we go to the stratagems. First one is drive them out. Here, I will show you the flavor text so you can pause and read it if you want, but we're going to talk about the stratagems. The first one is drive them out. It looks like it's 1 CP. Your shooting phase or the fight phase. That's good. It's flexible. One Imperial Knights unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit on your defensive line, an unmodified hit roll of 5 up scores a critical hit. Now, it's very restrictive. The opponent has to be on the defensive line. If the enemy is not on the defensive line, then you can never use this stratagem. So it's not a very good stratagem, but let's take a look at the map. It is really difficult to fit a base as big as a knight base and be able to put enough OC on that mid-board objective, that center objective, without being on the defensive line. So if your unit is just too big that it can't fit inside this choke point, well, you're going to be on the defensive line. So I think the whole detachment is pretty niche, but I think that if you're big brained about it, you might have a couple situations where you might be able to use this stratagem. And I say if you can use this stratagem, definitely use that stratagem because you're not going to have a lot of options to use it. Next one, marshal the defense. Your movement phase, up to 2 Imperial Knights units from your army that have not been selected to move this phase. Until the end of the phase, add 3 inches to the move characteristic of models in your units. Movement wins games. It's a great stratagem. I do like it. And I really like that it's not 2 Imperial Knights units that are on your defensive line. And do note, it is 2 Imperial Knights units. And unlike Valor Strike Lance, they don't have to be anywhere near each other. They can be across the whole board. You can just select any 2 Imperial Knights units. Armigers, characters, Acastus Knights, it doesn't matter. You choose 2 of any knight that's anywhere on the board. They get 3 inches to the move characteristic. Great stratagem. Is it going to be used a lot if you deploy properly? Probably not. If you're just standing on a line, probably not. But there might be that time when you really need to get off the line and have a really good firing angle. Then this is actually a pretty good stratagem. And it says up to 2. It's not, it has to be 2, it's up to 2. You can use it on 1 unit if you want. So it's great. It is probably the most flexible stratagem. I don't think it's going to be used more than once a game, but it's something to remember that you have. Next one is Lancebreaker. Horrible, horrible stratagem. Fight phase. Just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, 1 Imperial Knights unit from your army that was selected as the target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks and is on your defensive line. Effect: until the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, if the strength characteristic of that attack is greater than the toughness characteristic of your unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll. Now, it sounds really good, but it's the fight phase. What actually has greater than strength 11? It says greater, not greater or equal to. It says greater. So it has to be strength 12 and higher, melee. I say knights and demons. Those are the only two types of units in the game that actually meet these characteristics. And the knights unit that you want to use this on has to be on your defensive line. That's why it's a pretty bad stratagem, because there are 26 armies, 26 factions in the game. I believe they might have added some more. I heard that they're adding salamanders and stuff. I don't know if it's been done yet, but as far as I know, there's at least 26 factions, and this is good against maybe 3 or 4 of them. It's very situational. Remember that you have it. Remember against knights and demons that you have it. That's why it's called Lance Breaker. It's against enemy knights. Well, other than that, you're never going to use this. If you're playing against horde armies or vehicle tank armies, you're never ever going to use it. Not even once. Because nothing meets the requirements to use it. So it's a pretty stupid stratagem if you ask me. But it's useful against 3 or 4 armies. Titanic Bombardment. This is amazing. And this is why I want to bring the Porphyrion. This one single stratagem that really takes all the drawbacks of the detachment rule. Remember, it has to be visible. It fixes that. So it's 1 CP when you're shooting phase, target 1 Imperial Knights Titanic unit, any Titanic unit, from your army that remains stationary this turn, that is on your defensive line, and that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, range weapons equipped by models in your unit have the Sustained Hits 2 ability. Oh my god. Okay, what 2 knights want to remain stationary? The Crusader and the Porphyrion. Why? Because the Crusader gets sustained, but he already gets sustained. So what's the point of Titanic Bombardment on the Crusader? There's no point. This is meant for the Porphyrion. He wants to remain stationary because he gets lethal hits on all his weapons. And now he has sustained hits 2 and lethal. And this stratagem does not say that the opponent has to be visible. That means that your mortars are getting sustained 2 as well. So you want to remain stationary. You are towering, so you can tow a ruin and continue to remain stationary. And every firing phase you get, you have lethals and you have sustained 2 on all your weapons, including your indirect fire weapons. It works on your last cannons or auto cannons. It works on your Helios defense missiles. It doesn't matter. Personally, I'll take the mortars instead of the Helios defense missiles, and I'll tell you why. The reason is, I was recently playing Guard. I got smashed by Drukhari Scourges. They use the pain tokens. I think they get rerolls of some sort. Their Haywire cannons, they have anti-vehicle dev wounds. You can get a lot of dev wounds, a lot of mortals. And so these Drukhari Scourges, they also have move, shoot, move. Now, Knights, they're vehicles. It's an all-vehicle army, and they lost their feel no pain from Noble Land, so there's nothing to protect you from mortals other than Inquester Forge Pact, which it's a bad stratagem, the Omnissiah's Grace. But the Omnissiah is great. I love the Machine God. That's just a terrible stratagem, but there's really no defense against mortals anymore. And so, you know, the best way to counter Scourges is indirect fire. Move, shoot, move. You can't really fire back at them. You can't do Titanic Overwatch in this detachment. So, turn 1, just mortar the Scourges. Just fire the mortars, sustain hits 2. First turn, get those Scourges out of here. The Scourges, a 5-man or 5 alien unit of Scourges, did 21 dev wounds in one phase to my Doomhammer. 21 mortals. That 4-up feel no pain from the engine seer doesn't matter. You might think, oh, he must have survived. No, I didn't. Because he had another unit of 5 Scourges with the Drukhari version of last cannons. But he had 2 units of Scourges. And he had one with Haywire cannons that did 21, and one with last cannons that finished me off. One phase, I got destroyed by Scourges. Because I didn't bring indirect in that game. Big mistake. Now I always take mortars. And when you're playing knights in this detachment, you don't have a lot of Overwatch. Now, if you see my list and my strategy, you'll see that I kind of fixed that a little bit with my knight selection. But you have a 700 point unit. You want to make sure it doesn't die. Every Drukhari army will have at least 5 Scourges with Haywire cannons. This Titanic bombardment is amazing on the Porphyrion. And you want to take the mortars, not the Helios defense missiles. Because anything the Helios defense missiles are good into, there's another weapon that one of your knights are bringing that are good into that. You don't want Helios, you want the mortars. You want to have that indirect. If your opponent has a pretty weak backline, let's say you're playing against Custodes and they put the Sisters of Silence, 4 or 5 of them on their home objective. Couple phases, you could take them out with Titanic Bombardment with just your Porphyrion. So this is an excellent stratagem. That's probably my favorite one. It gets me so excited when I think about using a Porphyrion because it's considered uncompetitive. It's considered crap. This is probably the only detachment that I would ever play it in because of Titanic Bombardment and the fact that it has ridiculously good mortars. Next, Steadfast Superiority. When fight phase, target one Imperial Knights unit from your army that is within engagement range of one or more enemy units that is on your defensive line and that has not already been selected to fight this phase. This is very restrictive. Again, effect. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, you can re-roll the hit roll. Great. It's amazing. You can re-roll the hit roll, meaning all your hits. You might be thinking Gallant again. No. Because you have to be on the defensive line in engagement range of one or more enemy units. And that is so situational. I think if you draw out your defensive line horizontally, it might work for fighty knights. But personally, even that, you saw the thickness of the line, right? It's not very thick. Even if you put it horizontally, you'd have to position yourself like right behind the line and have people come up to you and then fight them. That's the only way I'm seeing this being used. Having a location like a movement restriction and a fight restriction is just not very good. Next one is Fortress of Intimidation. When, start of your opponent's charge phase, target one Imperial Knight's Titanic unit from your army that is on your defensive line. Again, it's an Imperial Knight's Titanic unit. That's a little bit restrictive because unlike the other detachment stratagems that are more flexible, you can use them on armigers. This one is just Titanic. So, Questoris and Bager. Effect. Until the end of the phase, each time an enemy unit selects your unit as a target of a charge, that unit must take a battle shock test, subtracting 1 from the result. Okay, it's kind of useful. You battle shock them. Now, you have to be very big brained about this. What is the point of battle shocking an opponent at the start of their charge phase? Let's say you have a Lancer and you just park him on the defensive line in the midboard objective. You just park a Lancer there, you know he's going to be charged. So you can use this stratagem knowing that the Lancer is going to be charged. Let's say you're playing against World Eaters. You know you're going to get charged because they don't have much shooting. Right? And so You know your Lancer is going to be charged. You use it on the Lancer, and every time an enemy unit selects your unit as a target of a charge, so every time. So let's say they're triple charging your Lancer with 3 different units, right? Each one has to take a battle shock test, subtracting 1 from the result. I think it's so that they don't reroll charge rolls. Maybe so that they don't use stratagems that buff their melee attacks or anything, or their AP or something. Maybe it's good for that. Maybe it's good for keeping your Lancer alive. But really, unless you're just parked on the midboard objective with a Lancer and you know it's going to be charged because you put it there to be charged, because you're playing a melee pressure army, like, I don't think this stratagem is very useful. Let's say you park a Lancer in the midboard and you're playing against Guard, or you're playing against Eldari, or you're playing against Tau. You're never going to use this. You're never ever going to use this. So, just like Lancebreaker, Fortress of Intimidation is nearly useless. It's only useful against probably maybe a little bit more than 4, but fewer than half the armies out there. It's so situational. You have to be big brained and you literally have to play into using this stratagem. It's only good against like melee armies. And even two-phase armies like Space Marines, you don't know you're going to get charged. So it's a start of your opponent's charge phase. It's not when you get charged. So you might blow a CP and they decide, "Oh, I'm not going to charge him." And actually from what I said, it sounds like a deterrent, but it's such a shitty deterrent because they take a battle shock test subtracting 1 from the result. Even if it's a deterrent, it's a really shitty deterrent. So this is a terrible stratagem. Steadfast superiority is actually good, but it's very situational. Lancebreaker is way too situational to be good. If you're playing this detachment, at least from what I see, which is playing ranged knights, sitting on the defensive line all game, I think that you're probably going to be spamming Titanic Bombardment. You'll use Marshal the defense once a game, and you might use Drive Them Out when you can, and when you can, you better use it. So that's the enhancements and the stratagems. Now we're going to go to our list. So in this list, we have a Castigator, Porphyrion, Vengeful Tread, and I put all the enhancements as 40 points because that's the maximum in the index that an enhancement has ever costed. And I don't know the points cost of the enhancement, so I can assume 40 is going to be it. That it's probably not going to be any higher than 40. It's probably going to be lower, if anything. So the Castigator gets a free tank shock, which kind of turns him into a semi-lancer. And the Porphyrion just sits back. We have 2 Inquisitor squads that go into 2 Inquisitorial Chimeras. Now, the reason I like Chimeras is one thing you're going to struggle with the Porphyrion is that it's 700 points. It only gives you 30 wounds. So you're kind of down on your total wound count. And so, and you're also down on your actionable units count as well. So having an Inquisitor squad and a Chimera, it's 10 points cheaper than an Armiger. But as you can see for this detachment, there's 2 stratagems that are just for Titanic Knights. So it doesn't have a lot of Armiger support anyway. So I might as well, for 10 points cheaper than an Armiger, get 2 actionable units. One of them, which is in a transport. And so you kind of play it like mechanized list, like kind of like orcs with trucks or guard with chimeras and tauroxes. I play guard, which is why I have chimeras, and so I'm kind of a little bit more familiar with mechanized play, and that's why I chose this combo. Nobody ever ran it competitively, but it doesn't matter. We're getting a new codex, and this is a fun detachment. There's no way this is gonna make top table out of GT. It's just the stratagems are way too restrictive. The only way to play is really make a long line and play ranged knights from your home to the opponent's home, or you draw a horizontal line in the no man's land and you park a bunch of lancers so that you're always on the defensive line. Those are the only two ways to play, and I don't really like the idea of just parking Lancers, a bunch of Lancers on the defensive line. That just sounds extremely stupid, especially because you don't get defensive stratagems or enhancements in this detachment. The Knights are a little bit weaker because they lose that feel no pain than the Index Nobelance detachment. And so I would prefer to play it ranged, and when I am playing it ranged, there's no Armiger support, which is why I'm bringing so many allies. Next, Immolator with Melta. Okay, why a Melta? The Flamer's great for stripping cover, but you also have a heavy bolter that's hitting on threes. You have three shots hitting on threes. On average, you should be landing at least two of them. And you have a hunter killer. Well, it's only a one-time deal, but your immolator's not going to survive the whole game. It's probably going to survive to round three max if you hide it well. But if you're using it to strip cover, it's not going to survive more than 2 rounds probably. So that hunter killer's good enough to strip cover. Why I bring it is because I'm not bringing Warglaves. And so it's nice to have Melta against things like Catan, against things that half your damage, against things that blank your damage. It's nice to have Meltas, so that's why I chose to bring it with Meltas. When I first bought Immolators, I ran Meltas, and then I realized I don't have enough chaff clearing, so I when I played Hellhounds and Guard, I ran them with the Inferno cannons, but I don't think it's a bad idea to bring Meltas here because of our the other stuff that we're taking. You see, the Chimera and the Inquisitor, they have enough very light chaff clear. So one wound things like Tyranids, Guard, Cultist, things that are really weak. The Chimera and the Inquisitor squad can deal with. And so the Immolator, it does have a heavy bolter, but I want to have a little bit more punch options. And currently in this list, it's the only thing that has Melta damage, so that's why I chose to bring it with a Melta. And then I bring a Priest inside the Immolator. Why? Because assuming that Vengeful Tread was 40 points, I had 40 points left at the end, so I was like, why not just throw a Priest in an Immolator? The Porphyrion has so much AP that it doesn't really need cover stripping, but the Castigator definitely does need cover stripping. It could help the Chimera a little bit. Now the Chimera, what do you run this with? There's a lot of different options. I'm gonna say the way I play it is I push him up as bait units so that when the Chimera dies, the Inquisitors get out, put at least a little bit of OC. That's how Mechanized Guard plays. And so I'm gonna run the Chimeras with heavy flamers, two heavy flamers. It has a hunter killer. It's a completely unreliable hunter killer, so you don't expect it to do any damage. The Chimera can't really take Meltas or anything like that. My Inquisitor squads, both of them, Plasma Gun's a great range choice, but since I'm pushing them up very aggressively, I'm taking both of the Servitors that come with them with Meltas. So the Chimeras, they kind of have two Melta shots sticking out the top. So I lied about not having any Meltas. You can get Meltas on the Inquisitor squad if you're not bringing Heavy Bolter or Plasma. The Chimera, you can already take two Heavy Bolters, so I don't think there's a point taking Heavy Bolters on the Inquisitor squad. You already have plenty of bolter shots. So I think having the extra meltas is the best due to the way I play them. If you play your chimeras KG and you have success with it, bring the plasma. They're they're okay. They're not gonna make or break the game, but I prefer the meltas. So last we have three Moiraxes. Two of them are gonna be run with double graviton pulsars, and one of them is gonna have a single grav, and it's gonna have a claw. Now, I did mention not having a lot of capability to Overwatch with Knights due to Titanic losing Overwatch. The only detachment in the whole game you can Overwatch with a Titanic is in Quester Forge Pack with Thronegeist Fury, and that is not an Overwatch. It is Thronegeist. You have to select one weapon. So it's not a very good Overwatch either, unless you're bringing a Knight Valiant. I'm bringing the Chimera and the Inquisitors because they're cheap, actionable units. You can put the Chimera on an objective, drop off the Inquisitors, and action with the Inquisitors while you shoot with the Chimera, for example. It's nice to have actionable units. And that blob, it happens to have 17 wounds, which is more than 14 wounds that knights get. A Chimera has toughness 9. Knights have been nerfed, the armigers, to toughness 9. The Chimera has a 3-up base save. The armigers have a 3-up base save. It's very similar. The only difference is that armigers have a 5-up invul, the Chimera doesn't. But I do like this mechanic with having 2 actionable units and having the mechanized feel to it. So the reason why I bring the Moirax is because the Castigator gives the Bondsman ability of sustain 1 and a bonus -1 AP in the Bondsman, and the Bondsman ability carries over through the opponent back to your command phase, which means if you decide to Overwatch with the Moirax, which you can because it's not Titanic, so if you haven't already Overwatch with a Chimera, then you can Overwatch with a Moirax. It has Blast. So now you got Blast, you got double Blast, meaning let's say you're firing at 10 Marines. You have D6 shots on each Graviton Pulsar. But due to Blast, now for every 5 units, that means on 10 units, you have 2 extra shots. But you're bringing double grav, so you get 4 extra shots. So now let's say the opponent is bringing like a 25-man blob of infantry. Suddenly your Moirax, now what's 25 divided by 5? That's 5 on each gun, so you got 10 extra shots. So you got 2d6 plus 10. That's way more shots than a Helverin has. And each of those shots are strength 7, AP -2, doing 2 damage each. So it's very multi-purpose. They're really good against basic Marines. They're good against Guardsmen. They're good against Tyranids, Cultists. And they're also anti-vehicle 2 up. So if an enemy brings out a tank that has 2 to 4 wounds left, you can use your Moirax to overwatch a tank. So the Graviton Pulsar, I like it because of the ability to get sustained with the Castigator, as well as having Blast. So anyway, this is the list, and one of them I run with the Grav Claw because the Claw comes with a Torrent weapon, so it's okay to use against Chaff, and the Claw's also Strength 12 with 4 attacks, hitting on a 3-up. With Lalo the Tyrant, it's reasonably reliable. You could do a few damage. It's D6 plus 2 damage, so you could spike and do 8 damage, or you could roll 1 and get 3. But if you really need something dead, keep a CP around. If you do roll that 3 damage, maybe you want to re-roll it. Maybe you'll get an 8. So that's my list, and the way I play, I'll keep one of the double grav Moiraxes in reserve. That way, if it needs to come in on either flank, it can. And the other one starts on the table and is buffed by the Castigator Bondsman ability every turn until it dies. And the Gravclaw Moirax, I'll show you on my map here. So the orange one right here is a Gravclaw Moirax. I start him at the bottom and I kind of push him up here in a weird place. These 3 units, the Immolator, the Claw Moirax, and the Chimera, they're on the bottom here, and one of their roles is to screen the Porphyrion from getting attacked from the front. Now, there's not much screening in the back, so he can get hit by Deep Strike. But generally, Deep Strike units are not the most powerful or reliable. The only thing I would say is a problem is demons. But against demons, we have Lancebreaker. So against one of the few armies that actually is going to give you a problem in Deep Strike, you have that useless stratagem that works in that situation. I really believe they made this for the Porphyrion. And the Castigator is this oval right here. A 12-inch move gets him from here all the way to towing that ruin, so he can fire on pretty much most of No Man's Land that he needs to. He can watch two different objectives, one of which has a line going through it. So if the enemy lands on here, he can invoke some stratagems. And the yellow ones are the double grav Moiraxes. They have a 4-inch base. And one of them's in reserve and one of them starts hidden. So he starts right next to the Castigator, so he gets a Bondsman buff. First turn, he can go out, expose himself, stand on the line, and get buffs. Now, it is redundant because the Castigator already gives him sustained. It is redundant, but he can stand on the line and ignore mods to hit against visible targets, and they have to be visible against ranged. And so the Porphyrion can actually hit this corner here. This is a dead zone because everything can hit this corner. Even the Chimera, if he gets on this line, he can hit into that corner. The Porphyrion, the Castigator, everything can see up here. So this is actually the most dangerous place to be for the opponent, and that's why I feel okay deploying my stuff exposed like this, exposed to fire from here, because if they come here, then they're just gonna melt instantly. If they're a big horde, you got the Castigator that has volume fire, and if they're a heavy tank, you have the Porphyrion here. Now, Porphyrion, he starts like this. He starts exposed, just like the Chimera and just like the Armiger and just like the Castigator. Now, the Castigator, he is on the ruin. He is exposed, but he's actually not exposed against much. Like, if something comes out here, he can be shot at. But if they do come out, one, they're on the red line, and two, they're gonna get hit by the Porphyrion. So the Porphyrion and the line together, they work as a big deterrent. The immolator starts all the way back here. Why? Because it's not a push-up unit. It only has a priest in it for doing secondaries if needed. It's just to take up 40 points. So the immolator is mainly here to strip cover. And with a 12-inch move, the immolator comes out here and 36 inches can hit all the way to the back of the enemy deployment zone right here. And 36 inches is the range for the bolter. The hunter killer is 48 inches. But anyway, if the immolator is right here, turn one, you can strip cover from something up here, and you can also fire through here. So this opponent's natural expansion objective here, this is actually another dead zone because due to towering rules, the Porphyrion, I believe he can cover the entirety of this objective. So if something heavy steps on it, it's dead. And the Chimera, he's here. So if anything chaff-like comes, he can fire his heavy flamers, his last gun array, and the heavy stubber at it. The immolator's here too. If he really needs to, he can provide firing support here. And the Moirax with the claw moves up here. From here, since Armigers have a pretty long range 12-inch move, he can either cover the middle objective or the right side objective. So turn one, you push the Chimera up here, barely towing the objective, going 10 inches, a regular move up there. On the bottom, you push it up 11 inches. So that means you have to advance 1 inch to be able to touch that objective. That's fine because the whole point of it is bait. It's bait. You want the enemies to come out and start attacking it. That way your other units can activate. And if it does die, it can spill out the inquisitorial agents right here and keep OC on that objective. So it makes single phase armies hard to deal with this kind of aggressive push because you have one transport up there, one transport down here. The mid board's pretty much a dead zone because everything in your army can fire on that mid objective. And so it's a dead zone, but you need to be scoring primary too. So, your claw Moirax can come up here, or maybe you can send in your Grav Moirax here, and the Grav Moirax will be protected by the Castigator. He has that bondsman buff, and so he can overwatch something that comes out, maybe kill a few models, and reduce incoming damage that way by using Overwatch. And if something does manage to kill it, well, it's either on the line in melee, or it's gonna be somewhere where it can be shot by the Porphyrion, the Castigator, the Immolator, maybe the other Moirax. This one's in reserve, so he can come out maybe on the top board edge, or he can come out on the bottom board edge and just come out and immediately be a fire support threat to the opponent. So when you plan out your deployment like this and your play style, suddenly, at least in my mind, the Porphyrion becomes viable, and it's going to be a threat, at least in casual games. I think a lot of new players might quit if you bring one to a casual game. But for things like local leagues that are like semi-competitive, they're kind of casual as, maybe experienced players. I see a lot of experienced players trying out new lists, new detachments, something new that came out. It's a more casual setting than a GT, for example. And you got experienced players. So they might actually get a kick out of seeing a Porphyrion instead of getting mad. I think this is a great list. It's just a basic mech guard list with an ultra super heavy, and your chimeras are gonna die. Your immolator's not gonna last past round 3 max. It might last till round 2 if you're lucky. Your Moiraxes, they're gonna go down. You got one in reserve. He might keep some OC on one of the objectives for one turn. But by turn 4 or 5, you got to really think about your Porphyrion coming on. He's really slow. He's 8-inch move, but you have a stratagem that can add 3 inches to your move. Again, I think that the guy who wrote this, the rules for this detachment, I think he really had the Porphyrion in mind. The Asterius is cool, but he already has sustained D3, so Titanic Bombardment is kind of useless. It's not useless. It's a waste of CP to use it on an Asterius. I think that the Porphyrion, it's cheaper. It's 65 points cheaper, and you want to keep him still anyway. I'm pretty sure he'll be standing in the same place for at least 2 or 3 rounds every game. Lance breakers there for when you happen to have deep striking demons. I think that somebody could make a better Porphyrion list than I can, but from my experience, I really like Mechguard, and I really liked running Immolators. That strip cover is really good. Now, let me show you how good stripping cover is. Check out this. Okay, well, you're gonna one-shot the Rogaldorn and the Land Raider. The Vindicator, you're gonna one-shot anyway, and this is one arm. I ran some calculations on one arm. A single twin Magna Last Cannon with blast, sustain 2 lethals, and the enemy has cover, right? And if you split fire, you can kill a Rogaldorn commander that doesn't have a blank. You can one shot it with one arm. You can one shot the Vindicator. You can one shot an Armiger. Maybe you can one shot a Necron Arc. Average damage comes out to 16, which means the Arc is dead. But when you look at the number of successes, it's actually 1.71 expected number of successful attacks. So if you get a little unlucky and land one, it's alive. If you get lucky, a little extra lucky and land 2 shots, then it's dead. So it's kind of fascinating, but that 4-up invul, it helps even a toughness 9 unit maybe survive. If he rerolls a save roll maybe, then there's more chance of you probably landing 1 shot instead of 2. So let's look at a super heavy, a guard super heavy, like a shadow sword, right? So here we have a shadow sword without the tech priest. You have AP -4. So you got AP -4 in cover. It's an AP -3, and he has a 2-up base save, which puts him on a 5-up. So you have a 2/3 chance that you're gonna pass save, meaning he has a 1/3 chance that he's gonna pass his save. So you strip the cover, now suddenly you have another AP, and that means that you have 1/6 chance higher of getting through his save, which is what I mean by pass save. Now, your average tells you you're gonna do 25 damage and kill it. Whereas earlier, your average damage is only 20. You're not gonna kill it. So does that stripping cover matter? In certain scenarios, yes, it does matter. It's mainly for the Castigator and the Moiraxes. It's mainly there for that. But even on the Porphyrion, it could just mean that you land an extra shot and kill a guard super heavy instead of leaving it on a couple wounds. So now we're looking at the Acastus Ironstorm missile pod. That's the mortar I'm talking about. When I say mortar, I'm talking about the missile pod. That's his carapace weapon. It has blast. You get sustain 2 from using Titanic Bombardment. You get lethals from his datasheet ability. And the enemy is always in cover because you're firing indirect. So your hit, remember, the best you can hit on is a 4. But you have sustain 2. This is why the hits look extra reliable. Because the sustain 2 essentially mathematically gives a +1 to hit. So against Marines, you're gonna do an average of 2 successful 1 damage attacks. So you're gonna kill 1 Marine with all the buffs. Against Scourges, you're gonna kill on average 2 of them, which is not bad. Considering 5 of them can do, let's say, 20 damage. If you kill 2 of them, you're reducing their damage output a lot. So even killing 2 Scourges is valuable. Against Guardsmen, now, we're assuming 5 Marines, 5 Scourges, and 10 Guardsmen. Guardsmen, they come in minimum size unit of 10. You can take them in 20, you can add a command squad, but they come in a minimum size of 10, so that's what I use for my example here. And you're gonna kill on average 3.5 Guardsmen. So 3.46. So somewhere from 3 or 4 Guardsmen, roughly. It's not great, but if you want to try to shave some OC off an objective so that you can flip it, it helps. Now, the next one is the Acastus Ironstorm Missile Pod direct firing. And the difference it makes when you direct fire is that it hits on 3 up natively. So direct firing actually makes it your hits a lot more reliable than if it's indirect, because the way they changed the rules about the start of the year was that indirect only hits at best on a 4 up now. So your hits, they got a lot more reliable. And when you're direct firing, the enemy's still in cover, let's just say, you're going to kill 1.5 Marines. And how do we get 1.5? Because you're going to have almost an average of almost 3 successful attacks doing 1 damage. So Marines have 2 health each. So you're going to kill 1 Marine and then one of is going to be left on 1 health. Against Scourges, you're going to take out about 3 of them on average. And Guardsmen, it's a little less than 5. So direct firing does help increase your damage output, and you can direct fire if you have nothing useful to indirect fire at. But mainly I bring it to indirect fire, so turn 1, if I go first, I can take out 2 Haywire Cannon Scourges. That's literally the only reason why I'm bringing this, because with the sustain 2 and the lethals and the blast, it's not bad for what it is. So the Magna Last Cannon, we're going to go back to the calculations and the averages for this. Obviously, it's not very good against chaff units, but due to having blast with the sustain 2s, blasts and sustains are amazing. You can kill a little bit more than 4 Marines or 5 Guardsmen. And in a pinch, you might need to do it. So it's good to know. but mainly you're there so that you can split fire and one-shot heavy tanks. Rogothorns, Vindicators, and Armigers. Now, a demon, you're averaging about 1.5 successful attacks and averaging 12.57 damage. That's pretty swingy. Now, this is not taking into account Lalo the Tyrant rerolls. Being able to reroll the hit roll, a single hit roll, and having sustained twos is amazing. So that's going to raise your averages a little bit. If you get unlucky, you're going to land one shot. If you get lucky, you're going to land two shots. Against some of the demons with 20 health, even if you land two shots, you're not going to be able to take it out. So unless the opponent is running an all demon list, I'm probably not going to split fire. If they have like one or two, if they have a Magnus or they have a Mortarion, I'm gonna not split fire. I'm firing both my twin Magna last cannons at that demon. Why? Because once it's in my sights, I don't want it going anywhere else. I want it going under the ground. But if they're running a full demon list and I happen to have two eligible targets, I might split fire because of my rerolls. Remember, I said I save CP rerolls. Usually, it's better to reroll the damage or the wound, something that's later on in the line. But in this case, because we have sustained twos and lethals, I might actually be willing to reroll a hit roll if I need to. Because I'm fishing for the sustained twos and lethals. Sustained two means that if you get a critical hit, so you roll a six, that turns into 3 hits. And because you have lethals, one of your hits is an auto wound. So you have one auto wound and you're rolling 2 wounds off of one critical hit. So it is very powerful. If they're running a full demon list, I will risk it and use the Lalo reroll and the CP reroll if I have to see if I could take a demon, because some of the smaller demons, they only have 18 health. The 20 health demons, you might not kill it, but that's why you can also take last cannons. And that's why if they're left on a couple wounds, you also have your indirect fire weapon. You also have armigers for that. So I will be willing to split fire unless they're bringing one centerpiece demon, in which case I'll just combine both and just take it off the board when I can. It's better to take it off the board than to risk leaving it on a few wounds and having it kill one of your important units. So anyway, you can see from these numbers here that Porphyrion is insanely strong. So I hope you like this video. I hope you like the strategy. I hope this little diagram, this map study of Crucible of Battle on Terrain Layout 1 helps you see how that defensive line works. Hopefully, you get to try this detachment. If any one of you decide that you're going to play this detachment with a Porphyrion like I recommended, then please let me know. I'm very curious how it goes. And if you ever need any commissions done, commission printing and painting, in the description of the video, I will include one of the guys that has done commission work for me. He's an excellent, excellent painter. He has done big nights. He's done a Asterius for me in the past, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I'll include a photo of it here. So if you want anything, check out some of the links in the description below, and you can check out his store on Etsy, which is Shapeables. He ships to continental United States. Not really sure about other countries, but if you're US based, I'm pretty sure you can order off of him. He's also on Facebook and Discord if you ask him. So thank you for watching, everyone, and hopefully you guys will figure out a fun and strong way to play Gate Warden Lance. From reading it, I think this is one of the only ways to really make it decent, and even then, it's more of a fluffy, fun detachment rather than a competitive one. If you want to go competitive, then check out my other video on Valor Strike Lance. It is way better and way more versatile than this detachment. And you get to bring Canis. I'm pretty sure everybody owns a Canis other than me. So you get to bring Canis. He's actually good in that detachment. Anyway, have a good day. Always praise the Omnissiah and bless the machine god.
Is to break with facing praise to the god of all machines, to the god of